today. You guys did super awesome stuff. All right, cool. So I'm showing my students. I have not canceled any of my classes. I'm showing all my students what I need to do on my growth. So, doing a little experiment, documentation. I think it's been working out.
Y'all ready? I didn't write anything down to introduce you, FYI.
Do like a slight intro or some sort of.
Well, I mean, all I'm gonna say is y'all are internationally well known.
I mean, just like where we're coming from, and special things so that
I can thank you.
Like Black Kirby invented
So,
oxygen.
wait, hold up. Talk, John.
Test. Hello, my name is John. How y'all doing?
Turn your mic up just a little bit if you can.
Turn my mic up. How can
Wait, hold up. I got you.
You got me doing stuff I don't know how to do up here. Hold on. Turn my mic up. How do I do that? Hey.
Well, hello there.
It's like Afrocentric Bane.
Ooh.
So you realize that John doesn't have to wear his mask. He did that on purpose just so we could stay home and not wear the mask.
Exactly.
I know exactly what he's doing.
Yep, that's exactly why I did that.
Exactly.
Peep
So
my-
I turned the volume up. I think we're good.
Is that better? Okay.
Do you have the PDF that you can share on your screen? I have it. We need to here.
All right. You need to enable me to do that?
I can. And just to let y'all know, initially he thought it was a 3-hour talk, so it's like a 108-page PDF. If y'all want to go through that.
So yeah, seriously.
For real. Exactly.
I mean, for real. It's like, I mean, the advertisement says 4 to 7, right? So
No, it does not.
what the heck? Okay, hold on. Then where did I get that from?
I don't know what you're reading. I don't know where the 7 comes from. Okay, we gotta get going though. Let me introduce y'all. You can beef with me later if you want to, but let's just do this. All right. So thank y'all for coming. I mean, I'm always kind of nervous about students showing up. Then y'all all pop in like 5 minutes before. So really appreciate it. Exactly. So this is Stacey Robinson in person, and this is John Jennings, of course, online. They are Black Kirby. If you look out here, what I did was actually brought, I have their book, Black Kirby, out there that they actually, what exhibit was that for?
Black Kirby.
Yeah, but where? Where was that one?
Oh, where was it? I mean, it was a collection of different places. It's
Okay.
just our entire first exhibition.
So that book is out there. There's a couple of books that Jennings did with Damon Duffy, a couple of other books, and then there's one that they worked on together, I Am Alfonso Jones, as well, if y'all just want to look through them. And just ask Stacey any questions about it or anything. We are streaming this on YouTube. So hello, everybody on YouTube. And this will be, of course, archived for later if y'all want to use it later. And of course, you use it for your class. But John Jennings and Stacey Robinson are, I would say, internationally, definitely nationally known comics artists, illustrators, writers, just all around, creatives. I know that Stacey does DJing. I don't know if you mix drinks yet. I've seen all those pictures.
I'm a barber.
John does a lot of stuff from the publishing angle as well, and also doing, like we said, working with graphic novels. And he's actually working on comics. I don't know if he wants to announce anything here. I won't say anything, but doing certain things with certain publishers, if you're, whatever about that. But I'm just going to let them get going and just let them talk and present, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So welcome, Stacey and John, Black Kirby.
All right, thank you.
Yay, us. Man, it's good to see you, brother.
All right, so we have 3 hours. You go and get relaxed.
No, for real though. Like I'm looking at this
night.
I'm looking at the Piedmont page right now. It says September 20th, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm not joshing.
You're right on. See,
that's why I made 100. But we can get through it though. You know,
Yeah,
can do it.
listen, we can do it.
All right, okay, so I'm gonna thank you, Matt, and
Yeah.
and Piedmont and everyone for having us. You know, so
Absolutely.
thank you so much. I'm going to share screen, and I'm using like the old school logo. This is one of the first Black Kirby logos that we didn't use, so I thought it'd be kind of cool. So we gotta use this one for a second. So I want to kind of get it started by just kind of establishing a few terms. First of all, this is actually taken from what Black Kirby is from a collaborative we've been doing with my school at University of California at Riverside. We will be doing a retrospective of our work. Stacey and I have been working together as Black Kirby for a decade almost now, which, you know, I cannot believe that 10 years have flown by. It's been so wonderful. So Black Kirby is a collaborative entity that is Stacey Robinson, assistant professor of graphic design, soon to be associate professor of graphic design at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and John Jennings, that is me, professor of media and cultural studies at UC Riverside. Black Kirby utilizes the device of the alter ego as a symbolic allegory for W.E.B. Du Bois's concept of double consciousness. It functions as a rhetorical tool by appropriating the bold forms and energetic ideas of comics legend Jack Kirby, combined with themes centered around Afrofuturism, social justice, representation, magical realism, now DJing, everything, hip hop, using hip hop as a methodology for creating visual communication. Their work samples from Kirby's style, but it also remixes it with the formal and conceptual influences from many other artists, pop culture, and artistic expressions through a variety of techniques such as bricolage, pastiche, oppositional juxtapositions, and deconstructions. So basically, we have decided to become like this kind of this remixing entity that takes in all these conversations and filters them through Jack Kirby as a lens. Really quickly, I want to like establish what Afrofuturism is. I actually got this from the interwebs, you know, even though, you know, everybody has like a lot of different definitions, but I kind of like this one actually. This is the first time I've seen it. So I kind of said, oh, I like this. A cultural movement that uses the frame of science fiction and fantasy to reimagine the history of the African diaspora and to invoke a vision of a technically advanced and generally hopeful future in which Black people thrive. This movement is expressed through art, cinema, literature, music, fashion, etc. I thought it was a pretty, what do you think of that definition, Stace?
Yeah, I actually liked it. This might be one of my favorite ones so far.
That's what I'm saying. I pulled it out.
Feels right.
Yeah, you know, because some of it, sometimes I think people go a little bit too much in the genre, but I like the idea of hopeful future, right?
Well, and I like it. See, and it's funny. I like the idea of generally
hopeful. Yeah,
because it doesn't have to be. Right.
It doesn't have to be. You know, it can be. I mean,
Right.
Stacey and I created this idea, co-created this idea called the cyber trap. You know, which we will probably get a chance to touch on a little bit later, which is kind of dystopic to a certain degree, but. You know, I often state that the Afrofuture is something that I think is more so of a destination. You know, it'd be great to be alive in the future and be Black, right?
But I think the key thing to really think about and look at is that it's Black defined.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
yeah, when it says African diaspora, right? That, you know, Black folk, Black conversations are at the center of this discussion, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Really quickly, because we talk about speculative fiction a lot. So basically, speculative fiction is anything outside of what people think of as quote unquote reality. So that includes like anything with elves, giants, monsters, spirits, different type like time travel, all these different things that are are considered to be outlandish and outside of what is considered to be reality, right? You know, popular culture. All the Marvel films are like speculative fiction, right? The other thing we're going to talk about a little bit is the idea of diegetic prototypes. So it's funny because like we have a colleague named Chris Lee, who Stacey just bumped into, who is he is a industrial designer. And so he talks about this idea of design fictions, and he deals with ideas around currency. And I think that was around the first time I started to realize that what Stacey and I had created as Black Kirby was really a design world, like a design fiction space, right? And that Black Kirby is an avatar that we share, you know, and in that particular space, we are moving and changing reality through design and design fiction. So basically, as designers, a lot of times we're trying to create something that's to be sold or to be, you know, put on the open market, right? But when you create something that's a design fiction or diegetic prototype, you create something in order to have a conversation, right? So you create what they call a discursive design, something that actually exists to have a conversation, and that is its purpose, not to be reproduced. And in a certain sense, Black Kirby is a diegetic prototype, right? But we didn't realize that at first, right? So the other thing I want to really mention really quickly is that a lot of times when speculative designers are talking about the future, they don't reference Afrofuturism or Black science fiction a lot, right? They do talk a lot about like these more Eurocentric notions about what the future may or may not look like. And that's something that Stacey and I's work constantly pushes against, right? Here's a couple of examples of Black Kirby's work.
Ooh.
What do you
That
say?
joints look fresh.
I know, you want to talk about these right quick?
No, I want to hear you talk about it. I just want to look.
Let me fall into these. We're going to talk a little bit about like the way that technology is such as that it is a really important aspect of Jack Kirby's work and also Black Kirby's work. What's really interesting about this is that one of the reasons why we actually did this as Black Kirby is to think about authorship a lot of times. You know, one thing that drives curators crazy is like, well, who did this? And we're like, well, Black Kirby did it, you know, because we're upending like how, you know, the gallery system. Because actually, if you really want to be specific about it, the Africa Bambaataa piece is a piece that Stacey did as an artist, but he signed it as Black Kirby. The Crown of Badassery, which is the name of this, that's the name of it. The Crown of Badassery is actually a piece that I did.
This is the Crown of Badassery.
Right. And so we did those separately, but the thing is though, we're acting as a unit. So when we did our first show, we did like over 120 art pieces in like 4 months, and Black Kirby did all of those, right? So it's almost like we were possessed by the Black Kirby spirit, and that's just like remixed all these things together. But we were really thinking about these things as a unit, right? So who was Jack Kirby? You know, you want to tell them who Jack Kirby was?
You know, actually, I want to back up a moment just to give
All
a
right.
little bit of more context, because I should have talked about this. How about that? Boom. All right. So for those of you who don't know, how many of you know who African Bambaataa is? All right, one person. Actually, okay, African Bambaataa is considered the father of hip hop, right? So, and hip hop being the overall hip hop culture, right? The 5 primary elements. This is a reimagining of African Bambaataa speaking into the microphone, like enchanting the microphone, like Odin did Thor's hammer. Does that make sense? Right? So it's, in short, whoever wields this is able to wield this microphone will have the power of like the ultimate MC, or in this particular case, the soul sonic force, right? Just like Odin enchanting the hammer, whoever is worthy to hold the hammer will have the power of Thor, right? So the idea, not everybody should have the microphone, right? Exactly right. So just to give some context about how we flip and remix mythology and our own thinking of popular culture and our own mythologies, etc. That gives you a little bit of context as to how you can view the work moving forward. Okay,
Thank you for that. So born in 1917, Jakob Kurtzberg, better known as Jack Kirby, is one of the most prolific, most beloved comic book creators in American comics. And so he basically co-created the Marvel Universe, you know, along with Stan Lee. And also, so that means that includes like the X-Men, the Incredible Hulk, as you can see, Fantastic Four, Captain America, Thor, as Stacey mentioned. And is extremely, was an extremely gifted artist, and in some ways helped define what it was to be like the superhero genre to a certain degree, right? Here's some of his other drawings and creations. And he just basically kind of like created this really dynamic style that was all his own. He was very much influenced by like popular pop art. He was very much influenced by collage, music, but also like African culture, and also like, you know, indigeneity and indigenous culture, and was just feeding it through his imagination constantly, right? So he was a remix artist too, right? And of course, you know, directly related to Afrofuturism is the Black Panther, you know, this the T'Challa, who basically is the living god and slash ruler slash protector of this wonderful country called Wakanda in Africa that has never been conquered or had never been conquered by any colonizers, and also is the most technologically advanced country in the world and richest, right? So he also helped create like the horror anthology too, by the way. Black Magic is probably like the first like horror anthology. He also helped create the first romance comics, right? This man was actually, he had his hand in a lot of creations in his career. So, of course, when we were coming up, we didn't realize all this. We just thought he just drew things funny. We didn't realize that, that this man was like a genius and he was creating all this stuff. He actually was trying to do like a Black romance comic as well. Really influenced by collage and remix, as you can see. Mythology and folklore, as Stacey mentioned, so basically he was dialing into like these kind of, he was making new mythology with the old mythology. The other thing that he was really into is what is called sublime technology. Now, Stacey was talking about this idea of the MC and the microphone. Jack Kirby really was into this idea of like godlike technology, and so he would draw it with these really intricate forms, right? And this is like what Kirby tech looks like to a certain degree, but this is something we kind of picked up in our work as well. Some of the first things we started doing around like these ideas around remixing his work was a show that we did called Fantastic Blackness back in the day. There's also this documentary called White Scripts and Black Superman, where I started kind of employing this idea too. Here's a poster for Fantastic Blackness. As you can see it mirrored against like the sample that I took it from. And I don't know, you want to try to talk about how we met and how we started playing off of each other in this section, Stace?
Yeah, really briefly. So John and I met, I was gonna say, we met online.
Met online. He was a Cancer. I'm just kidding. It's not a
and we met online. So really quickly, I think we met in 2006, right? At in person at a comic convention. And John was putting together a book of Black creators. And he said, hey, I really want you in this book. He was talking to me and my studio mates. He's like, I really want you in this book. Send me some stuff, I'll put it in the book. I didn't take him seriously. I did not send it. My friends did. They ended up in the book. I learned a very hard lesson to make sure I listen to John Jennings moving forward in the future, right? 2008, due to an overbooking at another convention, John and I end up by ourselves at an auditorium stage where we get to really talk and get to know each other for like, what, 8 hours or something crazy.
It was like a whole day. It's like just.
It was like a work day. And we're just going back and forth talking about all the things we had in common. John had finished a Cyborg series. I was currently working on a Black Cyborg series and he had completed it. I was like, wait a minute. We had all of these overlaps, but we really didn't know that until we really had the time to sit down and talk. So, oh, look at you. You're right.
I'm just kind of showing some of your work, man.
Yeah. So these are some of those cyborg images that I created. And we were thinking so similarly about the work, and I'd never met anyone who was thinking about the work the same way I was. And we decided that we would do some tests and start working together on some things. And we've been doing that. I think we've really been playing like for almost 10 years. Yeah. Next year is a decade of us working together. And it's really just us trying to figure stuff out. But once again, really thinking of imagining Jack Kirby, who was a second generation Jewish immigrant, right? And when the Marvel movies were coming out, those first movies were coming out, he wasn't being credited with, in the credits, right? So Stan Lee, how many of you know who Stan Lee is, right? Everybody knows who Stan Lee is, right? How many of you know who Jack Kirby is? All right, see, most people don't really know who Jack Kirby is, right? But a lot of people know who Stan Lee is. So this type of erasure that was happening to Jack Kirby was this type of thing. We're like, dang, like this Jack Kirby is passed, but Stan Lee is living, and we're seeing Jack Kirby's work. And it's like, but he's literally being erased from history as we're watching this happen. And we were like, damn, they're treating Jack Kirby like he Black. And I think John said they ought to call him Black Kirby, right? So literally we were like, whoa, wait a minute. Hold up, wait a minute. Yo, we ought to do something with that. So we did, and then it's been nonstop ever since. And you're gonna see a lot of that work going forward. I said that was gonna be brief. I hope that was brief enough.
No, I think you did pretty good. I want to do a shout out to Damian Duffy too, because the show that Stacey's talking about is called Other Heroes, you know. And since then, like Stacey said, he's always sending the work. You know, I was actually showing like the fact that, you know, Jack Kirby State was trying to get money from Marvel. At first, they were like, nah, because, you know, Jack Kirby wasn't even being like credited on the Marvel movies actually either. So, which is crazy.
So imagine so if you watch Fantastic Four, Incredible Hulk, right? Even Jack Kirby did their first appearance of Spider-Man, that cover, right? Jack Kirby
I think that's right, actually.
Amazing Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
Matthew, I think that's right? So, you know, in these really unique ways, like everything that we're watching now, literally Marvel Studios has totally changed the way the medium of film. Like if you watched from the very first Iron Man movie all the way through
Shang-Chi.
Or the I was thinking of Infinity War, right? You watched like 10 years of movies, right? So you're watching stories that happen epically. Now it's not just the one-off, not the one movie, but it's these epic stories, and it's totally changed cinema. Well, we got to credit Jack Kirby. We have to credit Jack Kirby in that. Just wanted to share that. All right, cool.
No, it's totally cool. I just saw Shang-Chi yesterday. It was awesome. Anyway,
I did not see it.
You should go see it as much as we can talk about it. I think this is the first thing that we did together. Stacey, who is a phenomenal collage artist like Jack Kirby, by the way. Stacey sent me this collage, and you know, I kind of did my 1-2 on it, as Stacey said, and started remixing. I said, okay, well, what if we took this image and we kind of put it through like this filter? Like, what does our stuff start to look like? You know, but this is a character called the Dire Collector that we did together. Let's see here. Let's see here. Yeah, so this is actually the first official Black Kirby piece, right? Stacey had this wonderful collection of images called what was the name of this collection, Stace? It was like a bunch of like 50 or so, maybe even 70 or so drawings.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the name of that was.
Yeah, I forget, because it was like a bunch of drawings that he was working on. And he just sent me a bunch. And I said, okay, let me play around with this. And so this character.
Oh, Master Black.
Master Black, that's right. Master Black. And he said, it's almost like one continuous line. I mean, I think he's probably like stops and starts a couple of times, but it's almost like one line that he just kind of makes into an image, which I thought was beautiful. I just loved the way that he drew blackness, you know. And so we took this and I kind of remixed it, add some textures, add some color. And this particular piece is called First Contact because of that, because this is the first, like, for real Black Kirby illustration piece we did together. So as far as like how we think about what Black Kirby is, you know, we really prize collaboration a lot. You know, we have a lot of collaborative partners, including our friend Damian Duffy, who the three of us together are called Tan Lee. We actually talk about that in a second. Representation, critical making. So this idea that, you know, when you do a lot of research, a lot of times you want to do like a book or like a research paper, but artists, designers, poets, what have you, we also do what's called critical making. So it's basically a praxis-based research strategy. Political satire, a lot of political satire. Afrofuturism is actually one of the nodes, I think. Nostalgia is another piece too. We actually talk a lot about like Americana and about the nostalgia that's connected to like how race is constructed in America too. Pop culture critique. The Afro surreal, it used to be like the ethno surreal, but you know, after talking to D. Scott Miller, I realized like, you know, we are talking about the strangeness of now. And a lot of times the Afro surreal deals with the strangeness of now. And of course, hip hop. We're of the same generation. I think both of us saw hip hop become a thing right in front of our eyes. And so we reference a lot of like hip hop as an extension of like how Black people use technology, right? And then we just started playing. We just started doing a lot of things. So Big Barda becomes Big Sister, right? Dark Side from becomes Black Hand Side, right? We also started playing around with some of his more like his more obscure work, like Spirit World, which is a horror comic that Jack Kirby was supposed to do with DC Comics. They re-released it. So we did this series of like, you know, remixed like abstract comics called Spooky World, right? And it has DJ Spooky quotes in it, right? Who is also like a seminal Afrofuturist figure. He liked these too, by the way. The other thing that we were really thinking about a lot too, when we were having conversations about Black Kirby, was that a lot of times, you know, in a museum system, the thing that's original, like the original artist's hand, is the thing that actually makes, that is actually valuable. But when you look at like pop culture, it's the thing that is mass produced that becomes valuable, right? So we actually started using the idioms of comic book collecting to kind of, you know, create a show that could actually travel to multiple spaces at the same time. So when we actually, you know, did this show, we actually had like multiple openings all over the country simultaneously, because we took advantage of the fact that we were dealing with like something that was a pop culture artifact that could be digitally reproduced very easily, right? When we hung this show in Jackson, when I went down to Jackson with the show, I literally took the show in a suitcase. And the rest kind of like unfurled, like it was like just posters and stuff, because we use magnets to hang everything. But these are like pieces that are printed and just cut down to like, you know, the size of a comic book. So we actually used like you know, the comic book bags as a hanging system, and it was very modular, right? And it's very fresh because of that. So the digital aspect was something that we did. This is a show that we did in Atlanta, like right, I think it's like the year after we first debuted. When was this show, Stacey? I don't even remember now.
Yeah, was this, this was right before grad school. So I think this was for me. So I think this was like might have been 2013.
Okay. But you can see like we had stuff that was like really, really printed very large. You know, we took advantage of the fact that UB has some wonderful, wonderful printers run by Jeff Shervin. Shout out to Jeff Shervin. And what we would do is like, you know, we would actually go around from one space to the other, and actually, you know, the school would pay for the prints to be shipped to them, and then they would put them in their archives, you know. So we actually have stuff archived all over the country too, which is really cool. And then of course, in the middle of all this, and you could talk about this a little bit, Stace, you know, the movement for Black Lives was jumping off, right? As far as like the overt shooting and filming of Black men dying, you know, left and right. So we started to create these different images to deal with that as well. But this is a kind of a process piece. This is for a show that we did in Utah, actually, at the, what was the name of it? Brigham Young, actually, University. Yeah.
Yeah, so imagine, so the Unkillable Buck, and you'll understand, like, you do get that as a reference for the Incredible Hulk, right? We all get that, right? So when Michael Brown, how many of you remember when Michael Brown was killed? Officer Darren Wilson, I believe, right? When Darren Wilson was giving his testimony about Michael Brown, he actually described him very similarly to the Incredible Hulk. He said things like, "I feared for my life. I hung off of him like a rag doll." They were actually like the same height, around the same height. Then he said something along the lines of, he described him as an it, and I think he used the word demon. And then he said something along the lines of, "I feared he would run through the bullets," or something similarly like that, right? Yeah. He basically described him as the Incredible Hulk, right? And so the idea of these juxtapositions, right, are purposed, right? It is this way of, we're thinking about how Black bodies are scripted, how the idea of race is designed, and how Black people have to be designed in a very particular way so that the idea of whiteness can be upheld. Does that make sense? Right? So, yeah, and then you can go on, John. I'll keep it right there. I want to keep these descriptions really kind of brief. If we have time, we'll go back to.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to go back through because it's a lot of work. You know,
we make a lot of work, y'all. A lot of work. And these images are really just from our first exhibition.
Right. I'm gonna fly through these. Matt just said me like, we got 15 minutes. I'm like, what?
15 minutes.
I'm like, Lord.
Well, we had 3 hours, right? How did
what happened? You look at your
how
website,
did over 2 hours go by so fast?
Right. Anyway, so yes, we're here just showing comparisons of like how the pieces. This is the original piece that Stacey talked about, and the other one. We reference a lot of things around the civil rights struggle, like the "I'm a Man" protest signs. You know, this is, of course, like Radio Raheem from the classic Do the Right Thing Spike Lee movie, but also juxtaposed with Black Bolt, you know, whose power is like, his voice is so powerful that he basically will just level mountains if he ever talked. And Radio Raheem was also a man of very few words, right? He spoke to his sound. He spoke to his radio. Yeah, and this, did you want to really quickly like sum these up?
Yeah, so once again, we're not just dealing with pop culture and comics in the way that we might want to think about that through collecting, but we're also really looking at protest movements that are happening, right? We're looking at what might have been retrofitted into the Marvel universe, the idea that Professor Charles Xavier, who is leader of the X-Men, mentor of the X-Men, is a juxtaposed idea with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the idea of Magneto overlapping with the ideas of Malcolm X. I think that is something that's retrofitted, but what we did was we actually wanted to play that up and really think about this in order to have these conversations. So for example, this piece, the first piece that you see is called Magneto X, right? And what you're supposed to do is really look at, and I wrote up something about this, that looks at the ideas of what Magneto was able to do with establishing a safe space for mutants. It was called Asteroid M, right? He created a safe space in space for mutants, right? Now think about that for a moment. That's very Afrofuturist. If he were Black, that would be very Afrofuturist, right? Or if that place existed for Black people. However, that did not just come out of the blue, right? This is something that Malcolm X had been talking about if you, in his 1964 speech, Ballot or a Bullet, right? Where he talks about America's never had a bloodless revolution, but for the first time in American history, America could actually have a bloodless revolution by simply giving the Black man everything that's doing. And he's really talking about this safe space of, since white people wanted to live by themselves and be a nation, then let Black people go and be by ourselves and leave us alone, right? Magneto actually created that in the Marvel comics, right? This was written by Chris Claremont. Well, that's a beautiful thing, but when Black people have done this, our spaces of safety have always been destroyed by the help of the government and by the help of corporations, right? So if you look at Greenwood, the District of Greenwood, the Tulsa Race Massacre, which we just celebrated the 100th, I can't say we celebrated it, but the 100th anniversary of the centennial marker just this past May 31st and June 1st, right? Black affluent town that is destroyed for being Black and affluent. Right. So we are digging into this, looking at this and thinking about this. So it's not just comics, but it really is this deep dive into some of those more sociological aspects of our overlaps as practicing artists.
So I'm going to fly through the rest of these so I can get to some of the stuff we're doing now. Yeah. So this is just examples from the first show, that we really just churned out in like about 4 months or so, right? So really quickly, as Matt said earlier, we have a Black Kirby catalog that's available online that you can get through Amazon. We actually, got a bunch of people, because we actually did this show and was on the road, people were examining it and started writing about it. And so they actually wrote these wonderful pieces that we put into a catalog. So it's an example of what a catalog looks like. When we were traveling, people would always be like, yo, so when is that Unkillable Buck book coming out? Or when is that, Major Sankofa book dropping? I said, oh, well, we're actually using, the idioms of design to actually like kind of have a conversation. This is kind of like Afro pop art. And they're like,
yeah,
okay.
We weren't intending to really make comics.
Exactly. And so what happened was we actually ended up making comics because people wanted comics. And so this is a piece that we did with our really good friend, Damian Duffy. So we sampled and remixed these stories and created like a time traveling hip hop based character called Kid Code, very much influenced by, what we would call like a Black Kirby aesthetic, right? And I'm not going to dilly dally on these. I'm going to go through them really quickly. If you want to talk more about them, we can later. But yeah, we did this like over a summer, and we can talk a little bit about production of how these happen if you wanted to.
So this first issue came out in 2014. I was this is my first summer of grad school actually, and while I was working on this in a cafe. I would spend every day in a cafe after my summer teaching courses, and draw over coffee and horror movies.
Exactly. This is another project we're getting ready to work on with Damien called Night Boy, whose powers come from deferred dreams, actually. And we're getting ready to pitch this to publishers right now. But essentially, this particular character, it's kind of a Black Lives Matter inspired like superhero. Jamal Jemison kind of like draws himself into existence, in a certain way, and that's loosely based off of Solomon Robinson, Stacey's son. Really quickly, we've been doing since then a lot of collaborative work. This is a piece called Virgo Mandem that we worked on with Cynthia Oliver. You want to tell people a little bit about this, Stace?
Sure. This was Cynthia's a dance professor at the University of Illinois, one of my mentors. And she was imagining Black masculinity through a Caribbean lens. And she gave us prompts, and we responded to these prompts and made these images. And then there was this collaboration with the dancers and Susan Becker, who designed the costuming, and Jason Finkelman, Cynthia's husband, who provided the sound aesthetics. And there's massive collaboration with these dancers, really looking at Caribbean masculinity.
It was really wonderful too, because we didn't even know what a Bessie Award was, but we were nominated for
for a Bessie Award, which is like the Oscars or the Grammys.
Performance. Yeah, it's like what? So yeah, but for like best design and stuff. So
right.
This is what really gets really frustrating, because each section of this could be a full talk, right?
Absolutely.
I Am Alfonso Jones is heralded as probably the first official graphic novel that deals directly with the Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality. It was a project that came to us after doing a lot of really heavy issues. Black Kirby has a knack for, I guess, dealing with Black trauma in a particular way, and so these kind of books keep coming to us. It seems like, because we had just finished a prison industrial complex book, right?
Right.
And then, so what happened was this particular story is about a young man who's Afro-Latino, who gets killed by a cop while he's looking for a suit to go visit his father, who's never seen, because his father was in prison and wrongfully accused of murder. And basically what happens is he gets killed, and the whole thing is about him trying to figure out how to become a worthy ancestor, so to speak. He's approached on this ghost train by people like Eleanor Bumpers and Amadou Diallo, people who have been killed through police violence, even Henry Dumas, the writer. And so he's being trained to kind of like look at the lens of how these particular incidents kind of are cycle. Very painful, beautiful book. Stacey was the lead penciler on this. Damian Duffy did a wonderful job like lettering this book, because I think it was a lot of text on the page. And we ended up like, this is a huge transition for us, because this is when we like started working from hand done work to like straight digital, right? Mm-hmm. But you can see it's a black and white book. I think it's in like its 4th or 5th printing from Lee and Low Books. So. I'm gonna go past this. If you're curious about critical race design studies, this is kind of like the gist of it. Stacey and I were thinking about the fact that, all these different oppressive systems have like visual remnants or visual artifacts that are municipal and sanctioned in a particular way. And that's kind of like where the idea of like critical race design studies comes from. The idea that race is a design object and a deliverable, and it can be undesigned or redesigned, right? We also became like really interested in like diegetic prototypes. We started finding these artifacts that were in Black literature. And this is for a show that me and Ronaldo Anderson curated in 2015 called Unveiling Visions, the Alchemy of the Black Imagination. So this big like graphic design show about Black visuality and fantasy and things of that nature. But all of these different artifacts are coming from Black literature. What was really, really exciting was that during this point in 2015, Britt Russert and Adrienne Brown were going through W.B. Du Bois's papers, and they found a previously unpublished science fiction story, because Du Bois wrote sci-fi, called The Princess Steel, that actually introduces this artifact called the megascope. And so basically what we're getting at is that we've always been creating these artifacts inside of like speculative fiction or just Black literature that were designed to actually have a conversation, right? So That was really cool. The other thing that we've been doing a lot of, you want to talk about this piece right quick?
Yeah, so we were commissioned by Ohio State University Press to, and we're on the editorial board, and basically our job is to design the cover aesthetics for this new line of books called New Suns. That is a speculative, how would we say? Just
Yeah, New
speculative-
Suns, Race, Gender, and Sexuality,
Yeah.
and Speculative. Yeah.
Speculative, right, thank you, there we go. Edited by Susanna Morris and I'm sorry, go back, because I want to see.
Kenitra Brooks.
And Kenitra Brooks. So it's just those two as the editors. Yep, absolutely.
So basically, we actually did the logo design and
The
branding.
logo, yep.
Had some hand in naming it as well, to a certain degree. But these sisters are like ridiculously brilliant scholars and close friends of ours. And we were honored to actually be the art directors for each cover that they put out. So basically, if you get a book published to them, you get a Black Kirby cover to grace the cover. Really quickly, one of the other things we started doing a lot of too was doing like a lot of poster designs and like, you know, art series for different events and stuff. This was one that I co-founded. The first one was in Mississippi. Stacey and I did this series of posters for Planet Deep South. The idea, and this is co-founded by me and Dr. Rico Chapman, who's a dean at Clark Atlanta right now, but at the time he was at Mississippi, he was at Jackson State. The idea was that whenever you see like science fiction and fantasy, first of all, you don't see the South a lot of times, you know, in the future. In general, like the American South is not present. It's like New York or Chicago or Los Angeles. And the other thing is you definitely don't see like a Black South, right? And so we started thinking about this idea. They treat us like we're on a different planet, right? And so the other thing we realized is that a lot of these Afrofuturist people, like these people connected to Afrofuturism, were from the South, you know? Right. Henry Dumas is from the South. Maurice White is from the South.
So in many ways, the origins of hip hop come out of the South.
Right,
It's
exactly.
also part of my research.
But a lot of times we're like, you know, poo-pooing this stuff and looking at this as like the South does not even have a future. So we took a lot of umbrage with that. So we created an entire wonderful, coalition of people, and we call it Planet Deep South. Lastly, this is the last section. I teach at University of California, Riverside. We have a space called the Culver Art Center. Stacey and I have always been fascinated with just like how particular characters have taken on or like their type of like masculinity is projected onto particular characters and stuff. And we wanted to do what we call an illustrated syllabus, an illibus. The idea is that you walk into the space, if you see here, you can see like, this is the book list, right? These little yellow printouts here are like the prompts for discussion in a class. And you see all the artifacts become a type of text that you can actually engage with. Stacey just did a piece of, just wrote a piece for, I forgot, which journal did you just write for? I forget.
For the Journal of Curriculum and Pedagogy.
Right. And so did you want to elaborate on this particular area?
Yeah, so I, in that journal, I talk about this exhibition, this first, it's a first in 3 series of exhibitions. And John, I think the next one you'll talk about is the second one, which is Candyman. But this first one here looked at Luke Cage. The Netflix series looked at Luke Cage, the comic, over his 40-year period of existence, and really thought about these various ways in which he's fetishized and feared at the same time, really looking at all these overlaps in masculinity. And, but also, once again, looking at our popular culture as well.
What was really cool about it, we also did a soundtrack for both. So both of these they actually have like Spotify soundtracks. We chose Mos Def to be our artist for the first one, and so all the prompts are like Mos Def songs, and the second was Kanye West because we wanted Candyman takes place in Chicago, so we wanted to actually have an artist that was problematic and kind of like had a dark aspect to it, and we chose Kanye. So you can see here like some pieces that we did for Reflection Eternal. And actually around the same time we were putting this together is when they announced the new Candyman movie. So we were kind of like ahead of the curve again. Anyway, we're gonna end there so we can actually have some questions. But thank you for letting us banter back and forth about some of the things we've been into. We couldn't show you the spectrum of all the things we've been into, but I think it gives you like an overview of what Black Kirby's been up to over the last decade with our collaborators as well. So Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, you were first by like a second or two.
I really like the robot part, near Blue Vinny. I wonder if you use like on Netflix, they have a whole series of like all kinds of art styles for robot that did stuff.
Yeah, what's that series? Which one? What series are you talking about? Love. Oh, Love, Death, and the Robots. Yeah. Oh, yeah. John, have you watched that? Love, Death, and Robots.
I've seen season one. I have not seen the second season.
Yeah, I watched both seasons. Absolutely. Yeah.
I enjoyed the first season. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to catching up.
Would you guys ever consider animation?
I'm considering, so John is, I don't think John is at all, the question was, are we considering animation? I don't think John is at all interested in animation. I actually fell in love with animation before comics. So I am teaching myself, I haven't animated in over 20 years. So I am teaching myself Adobe After Effects now because some of the work that I'm doing really is calling to be animated. So that's still in me and I'm trying to get it out. All right, yes. Sure, so the question, John, is what advice do we have for anybody wants to go down a similar creative path?
I would say follow your bliss. I mean, life is short, as we can tell now that we live in this time of like, we're living in the middle of hopefully the tail end of a pandemic, right? We realize how like precious life is. So hopefully we always did, but I would say like stay the path. I mean, one of the best things that I could have done was to go to school and get an art degree and actually like just try to figure out what my voice is, but I would say, yeah, definitely, if something is that you're passionate about, then I would say start there and start making things. There's no reason why you can't, we live in a digital age now where like, the means of production are more at our fingertips, and we have more access to information than we ever had before. And in some ways, there's no excuse not to just make things and figure out how you interact with things. And also not, don't be afraid to fail. That's the other thing. Fail safely while you can, right? Excuse me.
Yeah, my goal at 49, I have a very different perspective on life because probably I am past my halfway mark, right, in life, right? So I have a very different type of boldness in making this stuff. And my thing is, I love this expression, die empty, right? I don't want to die with any regrets, any stories inside me, nothing, right? I'm trying to research ways of making work faster, getting stories out faster. I love teaching, but I even thought about not teaching just so I could work on these books, honestly, but I do love teaching as well. So you will find, now here's the thing, you got to follow your heart, absolutely right, but you also got to pay bills. That is the reality. You do what you have to do in order to live your dream. But also I will say this, never ever refer to your art, your practice as I make art on the side. No. If you say that, you repeat it, you will always treat it like, this is a little hobby. This is something I do on the side. No. You work at the restaurant or at the shoe store, right? So that you could draw. That pays the bills so that you can make this dream a reality. Don't ever think of it as putting it on the side, but put it as proper perspective. That makes sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah. That's what we loved about the Black age of comics. We came out of this area where, we're talking about these Black comic books that people would make after they worked all day, right? Absolutely right. That's exactly the idea. It's like, if you love it, you're gonna have to do it regardless. So, definitely, I love what you said. Like, do not treat it like it's a side hustle.
It's not a side hustle. And Jack Kirby, I think, created the Fantastic Four when he was like 44, I think.
That's right.
I remember that correctly.
I'm like him and Stan Lee. Stan Lee was about to quit comics.
See?
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're never too old to live your dream. I just started DJing. It's a 30-year-old deferred dream, right? I wanted to DJ since high school. I just started DJing like less than 5 years ago, right? And I'm loving it. I've DJed internationally. I just got hired to DJ an event, right?
That's crazy.
And I really do it for fun. I really do it because it's in me to do. I'm never that air horn DJ. I'll never go, "Brr, brr, 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 brr." I will never ever be that dude, right? I play what I love and I do it because it's my passion. I gotta get it out of me. So I would recommend that you all do the same. There's another question too.
Mine was kind of similar about advice that you have.
From our really awesome sociology major, right on.
Well, for kind of getting into illustration and comics, I guess, or on the more technical side, what kind of advice do you have for someone who does want to publish work?
Yeah.
And kind of break into that sort of industry.
So advice for publishing and breaking into publishing.
What kind of publishing?
Comics.
Oh, comics. Oh yeah, just do them and get them out. That's
Yeah.
easy. Yeah. Because the thing is like there's no barrier. I mean, as far as like, okay, so back in the day, you would have to like move to New York. You want to work for the big two. You had to draw some pages up. You had to go by the offices. That kind of stuff. These days, like the barrier for entry into doing comics work is like hardly any.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to get your work out. I would say like get your stories together, start making work, and then put it up on
You got
what was it?
webtoons.
Webtoons.
Your
There's also
generation has technology and media and production and output sources that we did not have when
right.
we were your age, right? So
Tapas.
on-demand printing, huh?
Tapas. That's a new one. Tapas.
Oh, wow. You
Yeah,
see
the
what I'm
new,
saying?
yeah. So you can put them up any kind of where. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I draw on the iPad Pro, right? So,
Right.
and I use an app called Procreate, but what's the other one? Clip Paint Studio, is it?
Oh
Clip
yeah,
Studio
Clip
Paint? There's
Studio.
another one. Yeah, I have that, and I had it on my iPad for years and never used it. Like, wait, I have.
I
this.
didn't really care for it that much. You got
Okay.
yeah, but there's so many different ways to get
There's
stuff.
so many. There are free apps out there too. Honestly, the thing to do is to draw it and get it out. That's
Yeah.
the thing to do. And everybody wants to get discovered. Everybody wants to make the book and get paid and live this fabulous life of an artist, right? I don't necessarily know what that is. You know
Right.
what I mean? Honestly, the thing to do is to get your stories out, and then that is the way to quote get discovered. But I think if you don't look to get discovered and you make the work, the discovery will find you. It
That's right.
literally will.
You kind of read my mind. I mean, basically, I always used to tell my students like, don't get ready, be ready.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So basically, if you have an audience out there, if you start putting your work out and start building an audience, the people you want to attract will find you. They really will.
That's very true. Your
In fact, I
audience
think
will
Marvel
find
even
you.
has that on their submissions. Like if you want to work for Marvel, and they're basically like, yo, if you're doing big things, we're gonna find you. That's actually, I think, on their site. So,
And this is a beautiful time. So think about this, right? In this time, a lot of jobs, like in the last 2 years or so, a lot of jobs have closed their doors. They're not hiring right now, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know who has constantly been hiring throughout this time? Netflix,
yeah.
Hulu, Amazon Prime, Disney. What's happening right now? Everybody's in the house, right? They're running through all of their libraries, right? The thing that's the hot commodity right now, diverse stories. They're saying it. They're telling you, give us your diversity, right? Last year, everybody wanted DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion were the hot buzzwords, right? Everybody was looking for diversity. Well, guess what? They still are. Our world is becoming more and more diverse. And the thing that people are looking for, stories, right? That's how I teach. I teach my students to create their intellectual properties, to create their stories, because that is the thing you can pass along to the next generation. Your descendants can inherit your intellectual property. Think about that, right?
No, that's very serious. The other thing too is that professionals who are working in these spaces are a lot more accessible than ever before because they're up on social media and stuff too.
Yeah.
I just got followed on Instagram by Ava DuVernay today, and I was like, "What?
Well, nice.
That's crazy." You know what I'm saying? So these are they're accessible, and when cons do open up again, go to conventions and meet people, right?
Yeah. Matthew was gonna say something. What were you gonna?
I was gonna ask that question too, because I know y'all were joking a little bit earlier about meeting online, jumping at time, right?
Yeah, but we really did. Yeah.
So for me, I met John online. I didn't meet Stacey till later. I don't remember, how it was. Most of the people that I've met through academia or through spaces like this have been online.
Yeah.
So they are accessible, like John said, because he emailed me out of the blue to do an essay for Bitterroot, which is a comic series, right? So just those connections, I think, are really a lot easier now, especially with Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah. Networking is very, very important.
And I always tell students, I'm sure y'all do too, I did this in grad school before Twitter and everything. Don't be afraid to just send an email, professional email or message to somebody. 9 times out of 10, they'll message you back. Either I can't do it, I don't have time or whatever, or thank you, let's talk or something like that. Right? So connect with people.
And if you hear a no, do it anyway.
Yeah.
And if you're scared, how many of you ever been scared to draw your character, your ideas, write your ideas out? You've been scared to do it. How many of you are not doing it because you're scared to do it? Right on. Guess what? Do it anyway. Seriously. Listen, I'll be honest, I'm scared. I just presented last week, I was joked about this, to one of my hardest professors in grad school. I presented in 2 of her classes. I was scared as heck because she was my hardest professor. She wrote 12 pages of notes. How on earth did you write 12 pages of notes from a talk? Like, I was scared because she is so critical of my work. But guess what? I did it anyway. And that critique that I always get, those questions, those challenging things, have made me the practicing artist that I am today. Fear is inevitable. Like many of you are college students, you're gonna graduate. Those of you who are seniors, there may be fear, like in entering into the new world. You're entering into this world with your degree. You're supposed to land on your feet. You're supposed to hit the ground running. Expectations from parents, all of these things. But guess what? That fear is natural, right? The fear is of the unknown, right? The inevitability of the future that will be the present. However, right, do it anyway. Do it scared, right? The fear will go away after you become fluent in it. Nobody, I guarantee you, every one of you who walked in here today, you didn't even think about walking in here today because you're professional walkers. You've been walking since you've been a baby, right? You didn't think about walking in here. You did it. You're a professional, right? It's only when your leg hurts, you're immobile in some way that you really have this fear. Snow on the ground, ice on the ground might be a fear of walking, right? Fear of falling. But regardless of that, do it anyway. Like, do not let the fear stop you from living your dream, because that regret will haunt you worse. You do not want to be haunted by regret, I promise you. All right, I'm done running my mouth. All right.
That's great. Wonderful. Any other questions?
Any other questions? All right, are we on time?
Man, we perfect. It's like 1:58.
All right, I think we're on time.
This is 5 o'clock for y'all, though, huh? No.
Okay.
What time is it for you? 1, 2?
No, it's what? Is it?
It's almost 2 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so no more questions? All right, this will be archived on YouTube, so you can watch it later. I'll post on the app. So thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you.
Good stuff.